So, Chris, welcome to Rendering Unconscious. Where should we begin?
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I guess I've been following your program for quite a while, and just find it very inspiring. You've had some really great folks to listen to, and then I guess it was just about a year ago, almost to the day that I was in your cut up class. So I guess
That
let's
was
start.
such a good class. And
That
I've
was so
been loving your Substack and the cut-ups and collages you've been pairing together. I think that's what inspired me. I was like, you have to come on the podcast now because it's such fantastic work. Your aesthetic is so gorgeous.
oh, thank you very much. Well, it's like after that class, it's like that was kind of came at this pivotal moment. I was moving across the country, moving from the city to the countryside, and was kind of like a little, maybe a little worried to like my practice, like it just needed a kickstart. So that really was just what I needed to just kind of inject that kind of energy into what I was doing, and it kind of I've just still been on that same tip, just
It
continuing
really works.
words and yeah, it really was a great experience. So,
And
so
you
yeah,
work in all sorts of mediums, sculpture and
hmm and I guess I got my start with the whole cut up process, or kind of working in that vein within sculpture. And then it was kind of through your class that I ended up kind of getting more to the word. And I guess I can talk about that kind of trajectory. Um, Kind of in the beginning. So I'm a sculptor by trade. I started out as a painter early on, but eventually really fell in love with metal casting. Of course, like when I first played with metal, first experienced molten metal, I was hooked. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. It's just such a awe-inspiring process, and a really beautiful thing to behold and work with, and very long lasting. So I got into sculpture, start eventually kind of started to make sculptures with kind of a collage aesthetic, kind of I guess coming from the perspective of remix culture, because in my background I was very much inspired by electronic music, hip hop. I was a DJ back in the day. So that really kind of lubricated those wheels of the way I work. Um, and I guess what really got me started in that way of working was probably by the time I was in grad school. I was casting metal. I was taking molds off different objects, because I started to think of taking a mold off a physical object as a way of making a sample like you would in music, taking the visual data and reproducing it, but then being able to take it out of that context and kind of play around with it. So I kind of started with that. And at that time, I really was turned on by the ideas of Paul Miller, who you've had on your show,
I
at
love
least
him.
twice. Those are really great interviews as well. I've enjoyed those. So Rhythm Science, it's a little small book he had written. I guess that was maybe 2003, 2004 ish, and that really was influential. And I kind of built my thesis in grad school around that, and it was about remix culture and all these bits and the way that we kind of construct a new way of being and new creations through what's already been made. So that was really kind of instrumental in that way of working and getting me thinking about samples and bits and bytes of information, and really being able to play around and build something new. And I think that some of that comes maybe of the culture of the era that I'm from. I was born in '80, so we're not far away in kind of time frame there, and I guess that's kind of that that postmodern moment, to where so much of our experience was like the remix rather than the original or the
Mhm.
cover. Just the other day, I was in the car and I heard the Run DMC Aerosmith "Walk This Way," and I heard
Mhm.
that way before I ever heard the original. I was really kind of disappointed when I heard the original Aerosmith song. So it was like always this kind of sensibility of the remix, and everything had kind of been done, I guess. And it's just like everything's just been remixed and rehashed and all that kind of thing for quite some time. So I really kind of went down that road with my work. And after getting out of grad school, I kind of continued with that a little bit, but then I kind of fell into that kind of mode of, so much of the academic model, we're having to like, you know, defend ourselves, and it has to be
Mm-hmm.
about a very specific thing. And so I guess my work became very pointed, and it became very, you see what you get what you see, or you see what you get, it's all right there together. It's not as open ended. And it really wasn't until the last few years that I really kind of started to find what I was really attracted to in art. And it is that mystery, and it is that openness and that experimentation. And I was living in Los Angeles at that time, and I was starting to work towards a show. That's actually when I discovered your show here. And started, I think it was through my research on the cut up. So I was starting to come to this concept of the cut up, a la Burroughs and Geisen, and to really start to play around with images that way and objects that way. So coming back to that remix aesthetic, but maybe with a little bit more of an open-ended view, maybe a little bit of a mystical mindset to kind of play around and see what emerges. And as to not make it about a very specific thing, but allow the work to speak. And they did. So that kind of really set me on this way of working now, and kind of coming to that perspective.
I love it. I just, while you were talking, pulled up on Amazon the book that you mentioned, because I haven't read that one by Paul Miller. So if it's a nice little read, I'm gonna order it as soon as we're done.
It's really great. Yeah, it's very short. It comes with at least when I had bought it, there was a CD companion. You
Mm,
can find the album on most streaming platforms, The Rhythm Science, and it's really amazing. It does have Burroughs remixed into it, and Geisen, and like one of my favorites is Gertrude Stein's Portrait of Picasso with like hip hop
mm.
beats on top, and it just really kind of it made an impression, definitely. So
Very cool. I'm gonna check it out. No, and everything is totally remixed, and that's where we're at now. And I love the whole field of remix, but it's like, all the time, like when you hear songs, for example, like you said, it's like these samples have been taken and replayed and used by so many different artists and writing. That's why I love Burroughs saying like, all writing is cut ups, because we're all just taking these words and like collaging them in different orders and like making them say different things. And everybody's like, I after working so much, especially since I finished the book Scansion in Psychoanalysis and Art, which came out at the end of 2020, it's like I just see everything. Like every person is like a collage of like all the different people that came before and the people that influenced them and the people they've been in relation to, and like everyone is like a mashup.
very much. It really does bring to, when you start to look at it through that lens, it's our identities are very much a cut up, and really when you start to realize that, you can remix it, you can play with that and take it apart. And I think because so much of it in our culture is fractured, and we're left with these pieces to kind of pick it up and build what we will out of it. Um,
Exactly. And don't just give what you've been given. Don't just take what you've been given or what's been placed upon you or in you by society. Like cut it up and remix it and make it into something that's your own.
yeah, yeah, and that's it's just kind of a continually exciting to work in that process. And I think that I mean, specifically coming to the cut up, and through learning about more about dealing with the word, which I've really been engrossed with, because it seems like it has so much more weight to it. Um, because it's I think I've heard you talk about it. You start to kind of undermine, when you start to cut up these words, you kind of start to cut up our understanding of reality, really, and the narratives that have been placed on us, and maybe these things that we think of as cold hard reality. And it gets kind of weird when you start to defy that. You're kind of pulling at the strings of the tapestry of reality and unraveling it. And
Freaks people out. But some
yeah,
people love it, like you. So,
yeah, and it
and
freaks me
me.
out too. I'm not like, oh, did it say this? It is kind of like almost like a channeled work speaking through something to you. So it has its own life.
It really does. I love that you're working with it. What kind of sources are you using to cut up?
Oh, so much of my source material, as being a found object artist and being so, a lot of my source materials found objects and these things that exist. Rather than being a sculptor that I work with clay and sculpt something, it's all these bits that already exist. And really, that's the approach that I've taken to the word. So pretty much all the stuff that I'm cutting up are things I've found. Weird enough, like I'll find them on the street or find them, thrift stores and things like that. But then also in just weird places like my old apartment building, people would leave books. Like I think in some of these I've been publishing, there was like a book on astral projection that I found in some alley off Melrose Avenue in LA. Also the Marquis de Sade, same alley, same weird place. Just these
Nice.
odd things you wouldn't necessarily think to find, or necessarily that I might not necessarily pick up. It's just they just kind of fall into my hands. So I allow that kind of synchronicity to manifest there, and that kind of
Absolutely. They come into your path.
yeah, yeah, very much so, and it travels through the whole work. It's like I find the object, and then I find the phrases. Because some of these things I haven't read thoroughly, but it's just I scan them. I kind of let it, almost let it wash over you, and these things kind of come out. It's like I like that little phrase.
Mhm. See what pops out. And to me,
Yeah,
the process is very psychoanalytic in that way, because then when they train you to be a psychologist, psychoanalyst, and you're supposed to be like listening to people, that's kind of how you pay attention to words. It's like you see what kind of phrases and words pop out, because the narrative, of course, is important. People relating, what's going on at work or what's going on with so and so, the relationships and stuff. But there's always this kind of unconscious meaning at play that comes through these words that they call signifiers, and they like pop out and they seem to have like another meaning or something. And sometimes you just say that word back to the person, like, repeat a word or repeat a phrase. So it's kind of similar in like the phrases that pop out in the cut ups too.
yeah. It is like a peek into the subconscious, and that's what I found so juicy and even scary about it, and in a good way. I like to be scared
Mm,
in that good way, to be like, oh, this I didn't know this, or
how did it
so,
know?
yeah, it's a continually, learning about yourself through that. And I started to first experience that. I guess maybe in 2020 was when I really got back to collage, after a period of time, and I started to see these images, and they started to kind of come together and tell me these weird stories. But it really wasn't until the word that yeah, it does these same things, these themes come up, these certain phrases that maybe, and of course it's all inputs. It's like what I'm attracted to, what I find, but it all seems to have these threads that tie it together.
Yeah, and it
Um,
becomes like a feedback loop.
yeah, a little. I like to think of it as like kind of a fractal. You end up in kind of like a little eddy, and you end up swirling off into this little eddy of thought or ideas, and it's really sent me in some really interesting directions, um, artistically, and just in self. I mean, it does kind of, like I said, it starts to kind of take apart what you think is cold hard reality, and it leaves a lot of space for things to emerge.
Exactly. Self and reality are much more malleable than people seem to want to realize.
Yes, a lot more. And I think this process has definitely opened up my view of what is maybe possible with that.
Mm,
And
I
it's
love it.
yeah, it's I mean, you've made a book recently through this whole kind of process as well with your work.
Yeah, I'm like a cut up evangelist at this point.
Well, you have a follower here who's picked that up and run with it. So it's
But it really changes things, and it really like rearranged my whole life. So it works. It's like it not only helps you like, well, I feel like, yeah, I feel like it's similar to psychoanalytic process in that too. It's like you can cut up in psychoanalysis, you can like find these narratives that you've been fed, that you've internalized and started to identify with. You can cut those up by like realizing that you've done that and be like, wait, why do I keep repeating that? Do I really believe that? Who told me that? Where did I get this idea from? And start like interrogating them. And then in a similar way, you can kind of interrogate the word physically by cutting it up through the cut up method. And somehow, like, the cutting of the physical reality in the matter of the paper and the words and the symbolism therein ends up kind of helping you rearrange things inside yourself in a really wonderful way. And I tell people too, like, you don't even have to, like, you know, you don't have to have a specific idea of how you want to be rearranged or like what you're trying to create space for. Just the act of like doing it is like intention enough to start like help creating the space so you can kind of my friend Manya said this line to me once of inventing your life the way you want it to be. And I love that. Like you can start inventing your life the way you want it to be more than just like accepting the way it's been given to you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the power of it, and I think that's also why. I mean, I would describe it as it's a real subversive and even transgressive practice to start to take those and pull them apart. Um, because I'm a real iconoclast at heart, which is really funny because I had such a career in public art and making big public sculptures or working on them, and they stick around for all this time. But at the same time, there's a big part of me that wants to smash those things up. To really start to challenge that and to think about those things. And I think especially the word, yeah, we if we can subvert ourselves in these kind of hard things, and I think that especially came to me at that pivotal point in my trajectory, maybe that I needed to challenge myself in that way, and it's yeah, it's just really juicy.
It really is. I love it. And I love that you love it. And I love your Substack. What's your Substack so that everyone can subscribe? Subscribe now.
It's a cast into form.
Mm.
I think that's the name of it, cast into form. So and that was kind of inspired by my casting metal, and I kind of see these kind of things start to become. I'm starting to see how they all come together between metal casting. It's kind of an alchemical process, kind of playing with these kind of you're dissolving, you're melting, you're pouring into these kind of new, creating these new forms from what exists.
Literally an alchemical process.
Yeah. And that's what it's just it's magic, just like the art of the cut up. It's very much magic, and I think it also hits on that level too. It starts to it's like as I think you use the word glitchcraft. Like as these things start to kind of pull apart, you maybe start to notice these connections or these synchronicities, or they emerge in really weird ways that are really exciting. And yeah,
Yeah, and then you're just living in it. Like we recently had this retreat at our house for the first time where we had 11 artists come and we did like magic and art and did hikes in nature and things like that for the week. And everyone was saying like leading up towards the retreat, like, ooh, the synchronicities were starting to increase and things like that. But it just makes me realize like I remember when I used to notice it increasing in things, like when I would get around certain people, like when I was first working with like Carl and Genesis and things like that, I'd be like, oh, what's going on here? But now, then after a while, you just kind of live in this like magical force field, and it's just like that's how life is all the time.
yeah, it's really astounding. And I think the further you go down that hole, it's kind of like they just came out and admitted they're listening to us on our phones, and we get, you get an ad, you say something, it shows up on your phone, and but eventually it's like, okay, you start playing around with these kind of threads of reality or our understanding of reality, and you have a thought and you see it. It's like these things. It's like, oh, my head is listening to me. My brain is listening to me and projecting this thing that emerges, which is kind of a gift that keeps on giving. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I
so
want, and definitely you're gonna come back with your partner Jennifer so that we can all talk together. What do y'all have coming up?
yes, definitely. So Jennifer Joseph, my wife, she's an amazing artist. Um, we've been working together. We've collaborated throughout our relationship. We've been together about 15 years, and she's a painter, installation artist, um, And we have a project these days, and it's really my bread and butter is what I do for a living these days is objects. I guess they're interior accessory objects. It kind of started in a series of like small ritual objects, like little bowls and dishes that we would burn incense in and things like that, cast in bronze. It's called Eris Botanica. So it translates in Latin as like bronze botanical. So it started with things like pods, like this is one of my little
Oh,
bronze
that's so gorgeous.
pods.
Wow.
So kind of like through that process of metal casting, it's a transmutation. Traditionally, it goes through the lost wax process, which I teach also. I'm about to get on a plane and go up and teach that at a place called Yucca Valley Material Lab very shortly. Actually, this Sunday I'm flying out. So I've been very much engaged in this process, and that's really the root of Jennifer and I's objects. This Eris Botanica are these bronze objects, but with something like an organic object, you can actually literally burn the form away and you into a ceramic mold, and you pour the metal in. So it's
Wow.
almost exact reproduction. So it goes through that kind of,
Now I want to go shopping.
and you can find us at erisbotanica.com. We have an Instagram on there as well, and but right now we're working towards this a large craft, the Philadelphia Museum of Art craft show, and I'm wearing this heretic T-shirt as you can see, and it's we're selling those for to help raise money for capital to make more of these objects. But a lot of them are bowls, boxes, these really beautiful forms to kind of have in your home space. And we use them all the time and burn incense, and we have them on our tables and whatnot. But then also the pods are just, I like to also call them, it's a kind of shelf jewelry. There's beautiful things to have around.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. When is the Philadelphia Craft Fair?
I think it is the 13th, I want to say, in November. So
November?
yeah, so it's here
Cool.
in November. So actually, I'll be going back to California to teach metal casting, and when I get back from that second round in November, we'll be doing that. And it goes on for 3 days. So and we even have our own little maker's mark, which is a glyph. It's the alchemical symbol for bronze, and it's Jupiter and Venus, and it's its own kind of
Mm,
of that form that's stamped into all of our objects.
that's beautiful.
Cool, thank you. It keeps us busy. It's metal casting's really been a passion of mine. To make it, teach it. That's what I guess when I first jumped off, I wanted to work in academia, those kind of things, and not really finding place right away. I got into the foundry industry, so I worked in the industry making other people's sculpture for quite some time, from miniature to monumental.
Wow.
And
It's fantastic. And I feel like it's a very particular craft that seems to be, yeah, I'm sure there's not a ton of people that can do that.
yeah, it's very specialized. It's very archaic. We're kind of dinosaurs. I'm not that tech savvy. It's like even with the cut up, I just have to do it all manually. I want my hands on it, you know.
Me
Um,
too.
so having that tactile thing and really getting into bronze, it's yeah, the first time I was exposed to molten metal, it just glows. It has this kind of
Mm.
energy about itself that there was a foundryman that I was talking to when I worked one of my first jobs out in Santa Fe. I worked at a place called Shadoni Foundry, which was a very large facility. I would pour about 700 pounds in a go. Like we dressed up in our big spacesuits, and poured all this molten metal. And he had said, he once said, the secret of life is deep in that pot of metal if you just have to look deep enough. And it's like, so every time I do see that pot of molten metal, it's like this cauldron, and it bubbles and swirls, and it's
Well, it is
um
like the center of the earth, or maybe not the center, but a lot of inside the earth.
yeah, yeah, very much so. It has that quality. um yeah, it glows from within. um and then at first when I first started to cast metal, I was a little fearful of it, but then eventually you start to work with it a lot. You learn how to master it and learn how to work with something that's is so creative. You can create amazing things from it, but it's hot. It's 2,000 degrees, so it burns. It has a little element of danger and fun to it as well.
Yeah, no, I'm too scared of it. I have a friend that blows glass, and that's like seeing the hot metal for that is scary enough. I don't know if you know, but Jennifer, during for Christmas, she wanted to get you this book of ours called The Mega Golem, but then it's like didn't get there fast enough. It wouldn't get there fast enough for Christmas because it was like kind of, pretty close to the time. But yeah, we would love you to be a part of the Mega Golem project.
Oh wow, yes, that would be amazing. Yeah, I had been turned on to Carl's work through our workshop there, and I tend to find things again tangentially backwards, like coming to this, and I was an old fan of industrial music and things, and I really wasn't turned on to even Genesis's work till a little bit later, maybe. But then coming to, I really was turned on by what Carl was doing with his musical and writing output. But then the Mega Golem was very inspiring, and yeah, that had kind of fallen through the cracks. And we're like, oh, we'll reorder it when the time comes here. But I'm still very much it's on my list of things that I would like to get my hands on.
Yeah,
But
but you can all you have to do to make a part of the Mega Golem is to intend to do so.
yeah.
As it's an ethereal art project. Sometimes people make physical objects for it. Like I made the spine of the Mega Golem is like a long linear cut up like this. In the
Hmm.
shape of a spine. But sometimes people mail us things that they've made for the Mega Golem, like someone carved this big thigh bone out of wood and sent it to us. So the Mega Golem has a thigh. And I think Carl made a piece that was a sound piece that it was like the direction the Mega Golem was going. So there's all sorts of interesting things you can do. Someone wrote a poem that was a fragment of the Mega Golem's heart. So yeah, it's just this kind of cut up creature that's like, been cut up and remixed, and it has all genders and multiple genders. And yeah, she's out there roaming around. And if you want to add a piece to her, just feel free.
Exciting. I'll have to see what bubbles up.
Yeah, it's
So
fun. I think she loves you.
so yeah, it does its own life. It is that it's a creature that we're playing with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it becomes a life of its own, just like the Burroughs and Geisen third mind concept. It's like two people come together to work on something creative, and they both have parts of their input, but the thing that becomes created takes on a life of its own, and you can't really control it. You can add to it and play around with it, but you can't control it. Just it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, that is what's exciting about the whole thing. It's
So I guess the Mega Golem is kind of androgynous in that it's a being instead of just a mind, but it's doesn't have a physical body except for the objects that people have made. So it's an ethereal, artistic, androgynous, multi-gender being, magical being. It's kind
it
of
really
like,
just
a golem.
it opens up so many possibilities.
Yeah,
It's
many
endless.
possibilities.
So
So
fun.
yeah, invite the Mega Golem into your life and see what happens.
I just might do that. We will see what emerges. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's again, it's just such a cool process to keep following down, and I continue to work on these days. I've been very busy making the Ars Botanica objects. Um, but even then, when I'm just doing literally grind work, it's like getting back to the grind. I'm in there. That's my least favorite part of the whole thing is grinding metal for hours on end. But I find a little time to sit off to the side and cut up some images to rip them up. That's kind of my take when it comes to images. Something that I enjoy is even the visceral, the ripping of the image is still is that iconoclastic move. It's that thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
love your collages and how they're these torn pieces kind of laid on top of each other. It's just such a fantastic aesthetic. People will see when they check out the show notes and go to your website and everything and your Substack.
Thank you
But
very much.
it's just such a fantastic aesthetic, and I can't wait to dive into Jennifer's more too. See what
Yes,
she's
because
up to.
her work, and you can find her at jenniferjoseph.com. Her work all centers around energetics, energetic spaces, energetic healing, light and vibration. Um, she works a lot with acupuncture needles. Her last big installation was this massive form shown in LA that you could step inside of that was roughly about 150,000 acupuncture needles.
Wow.
So it created this energetic space that you could step into and really receive an energetic healing. It was really a beautiful, beautiful thing. So definitely check her out, jenniferjoseph.com.
I love
Um,
when artists create these kinds of magical spaces. I have a friend that used to be my roommate, Melissa Diaz, who's been on the podcast a couple times, and she creates installations as well. And that made me her work and understanding her. It's like helps when you know the person and then you experience their artwork. Really helped me understand like these kind of installation works more. Where she'd create these like kind of things that you could crawl into, and then you'd like be in this space, and it was like her own kind of magical world, just like in this capsule. And then, yeah, when you leave, you're like, oh, back to reality. But it's so
yeah,
amazing that people can create these kinds of, yeah, actual spaces, atmospheres, and other people can go in and experience them for however long.
yeah, it's all all inclusive, all surrounding those kind of things. It's yeah, I mean it's magic,
It's total
really.
magic.
So it's and I think the further I go down that, the harder it's to see those as individual things between the act of creation and and magic. It's it
Yeah,
happens.
it's the same. It's the same. And also, we have to talk about Alabama
Oh, Alabama. So yeah,
because you're from Alabama. My mom's from Alabama.
yeah, and that's what I'd heard you say before, and I know you had spent some time there growing up.
I did. I did. Every summer in the summers, I would go up there and see my mom's side of the family. And then when I was like, I don't know, 13 or so, all the kids started kind of bullying me because they said I was a witch. I was a witch from the big city of Miami. Yeah, they actually led to like physical altercations.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it happens down there.
Alabama.
See, we like aspired in Alabama to be from Florida. It's I think a
That's
lot of
sad.
if you made it, you ended up in Florida. Uh, um, yeah, that was definitely influential and instrumental. It can't help but come out in the work, but it doesn't come in directly out in the work as much, so much things.
I didn't get Alabama at all when looking at your work.
Oh no,
But what do I know?
yeah, it's cooked in there. It's in the soup. Um, but
Maybe
yeah,
Escape from Alabama.
escape from it. It very much was. Some people can really find that and be comfortable there. I personally don't feel like I could have survived in that atmosphere. I grew up in a very conservative town in the north, and it was kind of at the height of that time of the Satanic Panic,
Mm,
all that kind of weirdness that was going on. So there was a lot of suspicion and paranoia, what was happening in the woods, and murders, and talks of human sacrifice and all this kind of like just kind of out there stuff. And maybe that made me a little the skeptic and kind of cynic I am when it comes to dealing with such things, or just being aware and but it's and especially my hometown, they had driven the you might have know that Alabama has a sex toy ban, and that came out of that space
mm.
because there was panic over an adult bookstore. So that's kind of the claim to fame. That was Decatur. I was born in Mobile, which is kind of on the bay, which is kind of closer, to the water.
Hmm.
And that's where we would go visit down there is in kind of coastal Alabama, as we refer to the Redneck Riviera,
Hmm.
that North Florida place. It's swampy. It's like I've lived in a lot of different places. I really love. I've been in the desert a lot of my working life, and now I find myself back in the forest lands and the mountains of rural Pennsylvania, which is very cool and different. But the South is its own thing. It's just swampy. It's thick. The it's the humidity. I think it's steep
Hmm.
jungle.
Yeah, the humidity in the swamp. I had Makita Bratman on recently. You would really like her too, I think. Yeah, maybe I think you listened to that episode. Actually, you told me she
Yes,
talks
I
about.
did. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think
Yeah,
it's in
she's
Tallahassee,
great.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And she talked about the swamp like berries things.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And that's the thing about being out west is like the sun cooks everything. Everything's exposed to the light. It kind of clears, I feel like. And I feel like in the south it's so dark and it's so humid, like the ghosts can't leave. Uh,
Yeah, I think it's kind of suck. It's too like heavy. Yeah, no, it's true. And
yeah.
also, of course, I mean, all of the US and North America and South America, all of the Americas is like, yeah, living on top of the horrors of genocide and stuff. But you definitely feel like the weight of it when you're in that kind of region, like northern Florida, Alabama. It's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the kind of what has happened has left a scar or a mark or you can kind of taste it, if you're sensitive to those kind of places. And more so, it's funny moving back to a place that is very wet, very green, but it's different. It doesn't have that same charge as the deep south. I think where I went to undergrad, I went to the University of Montevallo. That's where I got turned on to metal casting, and it was deep in the woods, just south of Birmingham there, and it was such an incredibly haunted school. Like you can actually
Mm,
look it up. I think we had at least four ghosts. Like it started as a Civil War hospital.
mm.
Worked, so there was all of this bloodshed that had happened around it: slavery, the Civil War, genocide of the indigenous peoples, and it's just all still there. So yeah, it's a definitely a unique place to kind of come about and to leave and to have that perspective. Um,
Yeah. No, it's nice to visit.
yeah,
I liked going back to Florida this time. It was probably the best trip I've ever had being in Florida because it was mostly like, ooh, the sun and the water. Oh, it's actually nice like here in some ways. And then yeah, the food like stone crabs and key lime pie and
oh
like
yeah,
I would love to go to Alabama and have some pecan pie and pumpkin pie this autumn. Sweet
oh
tea.
yeah. I'm a
But yeah,
barbecue fan. I love Southern barbecue. I always get
barbecue.
my when I go back. I eat as much fried food and barbecue as I can, and that's
Randomly, we went to there's an island like off the coast of Sweden called Gotland. That's like a really big island in the Baltic Sea. It's kind of like now there's like a NATO base on it because we're in NATO now, but I think there was before. But anyway, but like we hear the planes and stuff going overhead sometimes. Um, and like, yeah, it's this really big island, but yeah, it's in the middle of the Baltic Sea. It's like a 4 hour ferry to get to it. And we went there last summer. My friend Tanya was visiting from the US. And she was like, we went to like go see these like caverns, like these underground caves. And then she's like, what's this restaurant? I smell barbecue. I'm like, there's no barbecue here. And she was right. It was like this like Texas barbecue place that had like I mean, I hadn't had barbecue like that in, I don't know, 10 years probably. And I was just like, we just got this huge platter with like everything. They had like tips and just everything you can imagine. We're just like eating this barbecue on this random island, like off the coast of Sweden. It's like, how did this even get here? And this guy's like, oh, like love the States, and I went and I fell in love with Southern barbecue. And like made this like great restaurant where even like the seats of the bar had like like horse saddles, like saddles for
Oh
horses, like
wow.
as the seats for the bar and everything. Like he went all out. Yeah, it was like it was
Wow.
pretty fun.
Barbecue unites all cultures. You bring
Yeah.
about peace. Um,
And I have to go to that island now every year just so that I can eat this barbecue.
barbecue is worth traveling for.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
yeah,
worth
and
the 5 hours.
I went to grad school in Memphis, so I very much was just steeped in barbecue there, and it just makes my mind. I'm kind of hungry at this point of the talk now because of
Yeah,
that.
well, on that note, it's been so fun chatting with you, Chris.
It's been really great. Thank you for having me. It's been a real honor, and I love what y'all are doing over there, and yeah,
And we'll chat again soon with Jennifer. Maybe in the early new year.
that sounds great. We'll be around. There'll be snow on the ground here, and we'll be sequestered inside. So we'll
Same.
probably have plenty to say.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Bye,
Well,
Chris.
thanks for having me.